Fading, ombre, color melting, gradient, whatever you like to call it. This video will be comparing the two most popular methods of transitioning between one color to the next. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Cletus and I've been a knitting addict for almost a year now. If you like this video, please consider subscribing and sharing with your friends. Make sure to also follow me over on Instagram for all my latest updates. Can I tell you guys a secret? Before I discovered these techniques, I literally thought everyone on Instagram was knitting fades with huge balls of gradient yarn. I was like, where are these people getting these amazing yarns from? What happens if you finish a ball and then the next ball starts at color A again? But I have discovered that there are techniques that you can actually use to fade and knit your colors into one cohesive piece. The two most popular methods I see on Instagram and Ravelry are striping and marling. So let's break down these two techniques and the pros and cons. Stick around to the end of the video to learn some tips and tricks on how to choose your yarn and choose which technique is best suited for your project. Just to let you know, this video won't be a tutorial, but a compare and contrast, and I've knitted up multiple swatches so you don't have to. So first, let's talk about striping. As the name suggests, you knit stripes. Thanks for watching. Just kidding! There is a little bit more to it than that. The idea behind this technique is to slowly knit stripes that will transition between your start color and your finishing color. The more colors you have in between, the smoother the transition. In this swatch here, you can see that I've been knitting the stripes in different sizes. I started off with just one row of yellow, and then two, and then finally transitioning all the way to yellow. This will help create the illusion that the fabric is slowly transitioning, instead of just seeing harsh, uniform stripes. In this swatch, you can see this idea put into practice with yarns that actually go together. Here I chose to fade 3 shades of blue by indie dyer TreLiz. At the bottom of the swatch, you can see what this technique looks like when striping a semi-solid with a lightly variegated yarn. And on the top half, you can see how this technique works when you're striping lightly variegated yarn with a highly variegated and speckled yarn. Again, I tried to knit the stripes as organically and naturally as I can possible, kind of making it up as I go along. If you don't know how to knit stripes yet, Very Pink Knits has an excellent tutorial. I'll leave the link down below. Next, let's talk about marling. Now, marling is a technique where you hold 2 strands of yarn whilst you're knitting the entire piece of fabric. If we're calling the gray yarn color A and the yellow color B, and in the first section here, we are knitting with 2 strands of color A. In the transitional phase, we are knitting with 1 strand of A and 1 strand of B. Finally, in the last section, it is 2 strands of color B, creating a little section in the middle that slowly melts the 2 colors together. Obviously, you can already see the gauge is different between the marling technique and the striping, even though I'm using the same yarn and cast on the exact same number of stitches, simply because you are holding the yarn in double. The YouTube channel 10 Rows a Day has an excellent video going into detail of this technique, links down below. And here's the technique demonstrated on the same 3 blue yarns as before. As you can see, the lines between the different sections are much less obvious, and it is way more melted together. In essence, by holding 2 yarns together, you are melting them and creating your own version of a variegated or speckled yarn. Now that you know what these 2 techniques are and what they look like in practice, let's talk about the pros and cons between striping and marling. Striping is definitely the most straightforward and easy technique. It's less fiddly, less chance of tangling your yarn, and you don't have to make extra calculations for accounting of holding 2 pieces together. One con for striping is that although the technique itself is easier, you do actually have to have a good eye for color and some basic knowledge on color theory. Although I deliberately chose highly contrasting colors, striping isn't very good for fading solid colors. Now this isn't evident just here, but you can see at the bottom of this swatch right here, the striping technique is quite obvious even from afar. Although I don't hate the way it looks, I think it can definitely benefit if I had a transitional color between these 2 yarns. Where it really shines is this top half here, where I'm fading a lightly variegated yarn with a highly variegated and speckled yarn, and these work together so well because in this yarn here it does use speckles of this exact same blue, so therefore the transition is easier and you're not just jumping from one color to a different one completely. I would say if you're using this technique, it's more suited for if you're buying a new kit versus using stash at home, because not all colors will stripe well and look fading. It might simply look like stripes. Speaking of kits, Labia and Amy is actually hosting a knit-along for Andrea Maury's Comfort Cardi. The Comfort Cardi uses the striping technique, and they have created many kits for everyone to choose from, so you know that the colors will melt and you will avoid very harsh lines. Now moving on to the pros of marling. As you can see, it is definitely a lot more melty and seamless transition. I would say this technique is the way to go if you have a stash at home of just solid/semi-solid colors. This will give you a higher chance of success. I also like this technique because it really gives you true randomness in the middle sections right here. Because as you're knitting with two yarns and they are slowly twisting around each other, randomly, maybe you put your hand down, you pick it back up, it twists again, it will create a true random effect in the transitional phase. However, there are some cons for this technique as well. As I mentioned, it is held in double, which means it eats up double the amount of yarn. The fabric will be stiffer, it will definitely be warmer, and if you're trying to implement this technique onto an existing pattern, you will have to do some maths about the yardage and the swatching. Another con for Marling is that it could potentially look a little bit too messy. Variegated yarns are already very speckled and random. If you're putting a very busy yarn with another very busy yarn, from afar the entire piece will look very speckly, almost kind of like static on a TV. And now here are some tips for success. Obviously, the most foolproof way of success is to go and buy yourself a kit. A lot of indie dyers now are creating their own fading kits that you can incorporate into whatever pattern that you choose. If you're going to go down that route, you can just use striping because the yarn are dyed specifically to be striped with each other. However, if you don't want to buy yourself a kit and you want to utilize the stash you have at home, a good rule of thumb is to choose yarns that are either very similar in shade or choose variegated and speckled yarns that incorporates the previous section's colors. Another tip is you can actually throw in fair isle knitting or slip stitches. This will enable you to kind of make it up as you go along and kind of think to yourself, ooh, the transition isn't very nice here, maybe I want to add just 5 or 6 stitches in the next row of the previous color to kind of melt it all together. So that's it. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of this video. I really hope I kind of demystified the whole fading process. Hopefully through knitting all these swatches, you have a better understanding of what these two techniques can achieve and which one is good for you. Lastly, question of the day. Which technique do you prefer better? If you like this video, please consider subscribing and sharing with your friends. Leave a like down there. And don't forget to follow me over on Instagram at Cletus Tries Knitting. Click over here for the video I uploaded last week and click here to subscribe. Thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!